All right. Well, we're getting started a little after 4. My name is Chauncey. I'm going to speak for about 10, 12 minutes, and then we're actually going to do some live demos. So if wherever you are, you have a headset, are we going to leave the camera on, Bill? Okay, that way I can kind of answer questions if you have questions remotely. So a little advertising to start things out. We're over halfway through our series for the impact of virtual reality. And today is a VR Expeditions, and this VR Expedition, there's another one coming up March 25th. So this is kind of the last one for a month. And then, but Wednesday this week, Bill is going to be talking about scientific visualization in VR. And beyond that, we also have the Services for Digital Humanities Creative Activities workshop series, which I was just at recently last week. And it's also a really good workshop to go to if you're interested in these topics. Specifically next will be virtual reality in the art history classroom with Matthew Brennan, who has worked with the AVL for a little bit and is in informatics now, doing some really amazing things with digitization and virtual reality, specifically in art history. And then yeah, there's still about the rest of the semester to go with other talks, so check those out if you can. Okay, so the arrangement of the room, I brought this up, it's kind of to help me. And here, you might want to know, the rest of the folks here kind of know, but there are VR headsets all associated with 9 of these computers. And yeah, it's every other one. So we're going to actually run different apps, 3 different apps. So you want to, like when we start doing demonstrations, you'll want to try at least one, like a little bit on each. Welcome, Margaret. Meaning like, you know, if you try one and it's like, okay, I got the idea, might want to move on to another one because there'll be different content. Okay, so I'm going to specifically be talking about creative tools in VR. And I actually asked Margaret to come check this out because this is sort of a nice new ecosystem happening, and it's really applicable to what Margaret does with her students in the SOAD department in fine art. And using VR tools is right up, I mean, that's what she's been doing forever. So what I'm really enjoying is the fact that I'm getting to the point where my background in media arts and science, where I'm spending time on assets and interface to create a user experience that's like more artistic and created from the ground up, are like applicable as far as doing it all in a VR headset now. So like in the past, I would maybe get into the Adobe Creative Suite or Maya and create digital assets. And then I might take those assets and put them in another package and process them for maybe animation or sound. And then later on process them even further and then put them in a real-time rendering package. So, and that was all done with keyboard and mouse. So what's different now is we're finding tools where we can be in a headset, use our natural body motion, and actually do creative work in a headset. So the criteria that I'm using to essentially specifically show certain apps and kind of point out the best ones are these here. So mostly the idea is that the creation that you're making is some sort of an asset, and it's useful beyond the VR experience immediately that you're in, right? So if I'm going to create a design for an interior design in a VR headset, I want to actually like have all of that information that I'm working on for any number amount of time, maybe a few hours, be something I can export from that package and use somewhere else, right? Because that's pretty typical of creative packages. The interface itself needs to be demonstrative as an advantage over the keyboard and mouse. You know, it's hard to define this. It's always kind of figured out when you're debating after using a tool. Like we're going to use Tilt Brush. One of the things that's interesting about Tilt Brush is you can paint in 3D space. You can do that with a keyboard and mouse, of course, but with a keyboard and mouse, how do you zoom in and out? Well, Tilt Brush has its own abilities to zoom in and out. So you want to try and be critical and think about, is this really an advantage for me to be in VR over just using a keyboard and mouse? It depends. A lot of these tools take practice anyway. The other things we need to know are if it has this sort of unlocked ability to be somewhat collaborative. You know, that's a really hot topic in VR right now because you want to be in a headset also with friends, colleagues, collaborators. So there needs to be a way to be more collaborative. And even if that doesn't mean you're in there with your person in real time and working in situ, your collaborator, you may be able to collaborate by putting the assets somewhere so that they can pull them back down into their own individual session, make modifications, send them back up to a cloud, and then you both can work in VR on the same asset, but you're sort of working in different sessions, so not at the same time. And then they need to be accessible on an IU reality station. So these stations in this room, every other one, we call a reality station. They all are basically gaming computers with VR headsets associated with them. And the project needs to be actively maintained. So there's several really good examples of creative VR tools that I don't recommend because they were created once. They maybe put it up on Steam or somewhere for people to get access to, and then they stop maintaining the project, and it just becomes this sort of like sulking shell of a project that everyone thought, oh, that was such a good idea, and it's gone. So some projects do die, so that's unfortunate. So the tools we're going to focus on today are Tilt Brush, Blocks, Microsoft Maquette. These two are Google products. This is one by Microsoft that sort of blends the functionality of both of these. So nice little competition going on between the big players in the industry. And they all interface with a hosting service called Google Poly. So that's something I want to highlight quite a bit today. Google Poly is a hosting tool that you can get access to for free with your IU username. It's an IU Google account that you have. And you can upload things, download things, you can borrow things from other people, and all the things are handled like accreditation, like you might see like on YouTube or any other content hosting service. And the ability to embed that service within other tools is interesting. So the reason this is exciting for us right now is we've seen a lot of maybe non-creative tools that are virtual reality related, like building virtual tours with 360 photos going to Google Poly. And we've seen people putting what we call photogrammetry data, which is a form of digitization where you take photographs of something and put that up on Google Poly. So this becomes this like hub for people to put 3D information that may or may not be applicable to virtual reality, but it's a nice little spot for 3D data. And Google's making this like wide and free, just like most of their tools are, and IU has a relationship with Google. So it's nice to see this as an accessible tool for us. And then when I say about embedding, what's nice is this can be, Google Poly can be kind of removed, its functionality can be removed and put into a web page, your own web page. It could also be put in a VR application. That's what we're gonna see in the demos today. We can actually pull Poly data into our session, put it back up into Poly. Bill showed me something the other day where someone was using the same functionality where they're doing augmented reality, where you could hold your phone out, and as soon as it identified a flat surface like the ground or a table, you could tap, and then it would give you a menu to let you choose what Google Poly model you want. Maybe it's a cactus that you made in Tilt Brush, and then you hit go, and now there's a cactus, virtually on the table, and you can move your phone around it, and it's located right there. So just this sort of quick interplay between your creative tools and these like experiential technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality make this really interesting. Also, another big win for Google Poly is that it uses the GLTF file format as an option. It's not the only option, but this is an open format. You can read all the data, so therefore your data can kind of live on forever, which is important for certain people that are working with data sets. Other tools to consider, these are not going to be covered today as far as on the station, but if you want to take a picture of this slide or find the slides later, these are some other good ones. Soundstage is an unmaintained project, but the good news is the developers were kind enough after they were done maintaining the project to dump it off. Say, here it is on GitHub, all our code, everything we did to make this amazing music creation tool. So this is like a way to be creative, building out keyboard loops, making beats, and just creating music in VR. They went ahead and just deployed all that code up on the internet and open sourced it. So anybody can take that and modify it and build it themselves and extend it. Mindshow is a theater package. So this is something that you can actually hop in, pull down characters from Poly, objects from Poly, and Google Poly, the software I was saying before, and create theater shows where you actually can position these silly characters, give them voice, and they're smart enough to like pay attention to the audio file that you would put in for their voice and have their lips move in some sort of a approximation of what it might look like when they say the lines you're saying. And you can make little like screenplays, you can make full movies. There's quite a bit of silly things happening on YouTube, and actually kind of serious things happening on YouTube with creations made in Mindshow. That's a good question. So the question was, can you load things from Tilt Brush, Blocks, or Maquette into Mindshow? That is true for Blocks and Maquette, but not Tilt Brush. The caveat with Tilt Brush is that it's not just 3D data, it's 3D data with some proprietary brushes that are associated with the 3D data, and not everything's gonna have access to those brushes. It does work in Unity though, but that doesn't help here. Gravity Sketch is a paid for application. By the way, these two are free. Gravity Sketch is similar to Tilt Brush in that you can sketch in VR space, and it has more of a sketching feel to it, less painting. I haven't played much with this. Anim VR is really pretty amazing. It's a paid application. I haven't made the leap to putting this on our reality stations just because it's somewhat esoteric. Not everyone's an animator or going to want to animate, but it is an interesting tool to take your creations from Blocks or Maquette and put keyframe animations to them and do animations in virtual reality. Also, the jury's still out if this is an effective way to animate over a keyboard and mouse interface. Painter, this is a non-Steam application, but it works in Firefox. Firefox, Mozilla, they've done a lot with building VR functionality into web browsers. And my colleague Dave Reagan's here today. He knows quite a bit about this. He's the one that introduced this to me. It's like Tilt Brush, but it runs from a browser. So interesting. Our internet websites now can do VR. And then ShapeLab is somewhat of a newer one that I don't know if you knew about this, Bill. It's a sculpting tool that's free for Steam VR. Haven't tested yet. So I just found it a couple days ago. So I threw it up here because people have high reviews on it, but I need to get to testing it out. By the way, stuff comes out every day. I can't keep up. So you're probably familiar with just like looking for a tool and maybe finding it actually created out there, or looking for an idea in VR and it's already out there. It's a pretty cool time we're living in right now. Okay, so I wanted to, before we turn the headsets on, show you guys one interesting functionality that I didn't immediately know about that is quite useful. So I'm going to open up Unity here on my system. Unity is a tool that I don't recommend for everyone, but for people who are developing their own virtual reality applications, you would typically look at Unity as one of the premier tools to use for this. There are, of course, others, but one of the neat things about Unity is it will show you this poly interfacing quite well. Actually, I should sign in real quick. So I'm logging into a Unity account. Specifically, I'm going to make a brand new project. Just going to leave it blankly named. Let me go to the Google Poly website real quick. Okay. And I'm going to use my IU username. All right, so I'm logged in here as myself as cfriend at IU. You can do this as well. And this is poly.google.com. And you can search for just about anything. Like I'll search for a fish because I see a fish on the picture on the screen there. There's probably a lot of them. And then I can filter my search for something that's, say, remixable, okay? And the reason I'm doing this is like maybe I'm doing a project in Unity where I need access to these sorts of models, say like a dolphin. And I'm going to mock up something that has a dolphin in it. I'm going to go ahead and like that dolphin to make sure it's easily findable later, you know, being associated with my own account. And I'm going to grab this lobster or crayfish. Yep, that looks good. I'm going to like that. And then now I'm going to go inside of Unity. This is a fresh project. And go to this thing here called the Asset Store. So if you don't know Unity, I have tutorials that I'm producing, a new round of tutorials for Unity that go from the basics to doing exactly what I'm doing here that are high impact tactics in Unity that don't require a lot of custom techniques. And those will be out March 5th. So what I'm going to do here is look for Poly Toolkit. And toolkit's one word. There it is there. So Google published this package right into the Unity Asset Store, and I'm essentially downloading a zip file of all that's needed, all that's necessary to modify the Unity interface so that I can start using Poly within the editor tool itself. So the real point I'm trying to get to here is this quick interplay that, say, Margaret, your students could have with Unity itself being a final deliverable you're already using, or a final tool that you already use in your workflow. They could spend their time in one of these VR tools, upload it, put it into VR all in the same hour, you know, not just the same day. Okay. So there's a networking component to this, obviously, because Poly is a cloud-based solution. So I have to let Unity allow for that type of communication to happen between their servers and my local copy of Unity. There's a checkbox I need to enable, and it's just there for security purposes. So as soon as it's got it unzipped here, just about there. Sure, thank you.
So you obviously became familiar with the GLTF format. Did you look into the actual format design? Is it, I assume it's ASCII, C graph, is that animation built in, or do you know?
It's ASCII readable that has, oh yeah, so Jeff's question is, I looked into the GLTF format. What did I learn as far as like its functionality? Does it have animation built in? Does it have ASCII readable characteristics to it? ASCII readable, yes, it's in JSON format. Does it have animation? Yes, it has animation. Colors, yes. It should produce a texture file next to it if you have texture maps. Most exporters should do that. And from what I understood, or from what I could characterize, it should encapsulate animation, the polygons themselves, the characteristics of the polygon mesh, and colors, and then a separate texture file. And that's all I know about. If there's any other functionalities in there, the Kronos group has a web page that they keep updating, because it's kind of a moving target right now still for a format. And what they're trying to do is establish GLTF as the streaming standard. So there's companies trying to build compression, decompression algorithms to get 3D off and on to servers fast, like we do with video on the internet. So they're optimizing algorithms and chips to work with that idea of compressing and decompressing 3D data with GLTF. So yay, that's a good win for 3D data on the internet. And it sounds like, and it looks like the Kronos group is kind of won out with that, which is good. I think that's a good thing for everybody. By the way, there's also a binary format that's more effective as far as being efficient, but it's obviously not going to be living on. It's called GLB, so it'd be like 3D data that's binary, so it'll just be a smaller file size. Okay, now I'm in the Unity editor here. I'm going to do that security measure I mentioned earlier, so I'm just going to hit File, Build Settings, Player Settings, and I'm looking for, all it is just a checkbox saying, go ahead and run unsafe code on my computer here. It literally says unsafe. And all that's kind of alluding to is this connectivity with a website, giving that website sort of full access to stream in information and pull back information. Yep. So to get here, I went to just File, Build Settings, which is your common compiler window as you're building out what's to be compiled from the project. And there's a button at the bottom for Player Settings, which opens up this sort of panel of options that are specific to the platform you're using. And it automatically went to Windows or Linux or Mac standalone. And then within other settings specifically, I just scrolled through looking for just this one allow unsafe checkbox. Okay. And by doing that, a bunch of Google Poly windows showed up right when I did that. And I'll go ahead and bring those back up. They're under Window, Poly, Browser Toolkit, or Poly Toolkit. And this is just a tabbed window, just like most creative software, so you can dock I can dock it here at the bottom. And then now I have access to Poly, but I'm not signed in. So if I click this, it'll actually open up my browser, let me allow Unity to utilize. So I just had to allow it once. Now I'm signed in. I could go ahead and search via just their search bar in here, or I could go look for my favorites. So let's go to my favorites. Your likes, sorry. And this crawfish. I'm just going to say import into project. There are some settings you can pay attention to there, but I'm just going to quickly hit import. And then let me go back and also import that dolphin. Okay. And then going down here, I have now a folder called Poly after importing those. I'll make this bigger so you can see. There's Poly Toolkit, which you can kind of ignore that. There's some things in there that are more advanced, but when you import objects from Poly, they're just going to show up in the Polys folder under Assets. And there'll be Unity prefabs, which are basically packaged models with any characteristics like animation that would be associated with it, and color characteristics and textures. But then you can now, since it's a prefab, just drag it right into your scene if I have scene view up. And this crayfish has a very large scale to start with, but there it is. Let's see if the dolphins are relatively the same size. Nope. It's okay. So now we have some assets right from Poly into here, and I can come back to this later. I'm going to run some tilt brush stuff up here with this headset using this PC, actually not even my laptop, and I'll be able to export my stuff from tilt brush and bring it into Unity later, but I'll save that for later on. And the last part of my slide I wanted to mention is I have recently created 3 tutorials. These can be useful for folks who are wanting to do summer camps all the way to doing design in VR for architecture, because what you're getting from this is a lot of impact for like no coding sophistication, and it's actually quite fun to go through this, because really what I'm teaching you is just how to hook up these creative tools to your account, how to download and upload to those accounts, and then sort of the interface inside of these tools. And then it's just up to you to kind of practice with tilt brush, Maquette, or blocks to get good at what you want to make. All right, enough of me talking. I definitely went more than 12 minutes. We're going to leave it online for the stream if people have questions, but we're going to set up some VR demos here in the lab so that people can try this out.
There's a couple of people on Zoom, so ask if they will have any questions.
Yeah, anybody on Zoom have any questions though before I start doing VR demos in the room? Sorry, Bill. Yeah, I did that because my laptop microphone would start echoing this one. Yeah. Okay. No questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and.
I'm gonna try and put Zoom on that machine too.
I can launch it.
Yeah, I got the URLs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
What do we close it?
I have no idea what that is. FPS VR.
Yes, it's fine. We don't need to close it.
Okay. It looks like I'm in tilt brush. So I'm going to bounce between tilt brush, Maquette, and blocks, and just show you how to at least access Poly. You don't necessarily need to log into these systems when you're doing the demo yourself. You can leave it to C Frend. So I need to disable sharing this one. Yeah, just go ahead and run screen share. Cool. All right, so I haven't logged in. This is a fresh copy of, or fresh session of Tilt Brush here. And I have, 2 handsets and a headset, and I can look around, of course. If you've never done Tilt Brush before, like I said, you're gonna typically find interactions like this where I'm waving my hand around and holding a button down and I can paint and then look around this. this object. I mentioned earlier about zooming in and out. There are grip buttons on the sides of these controllers. You'll find in a lot of these applications, these grip buttons are important for creative works because you need to be able to actually grip items. In Tilt Brush, it actually allows us to, if I grip both of them at the same time, zoom me up bigger or smaller. Oh, the tutorial's still going in the tool here, so I'm just getting through that. All right, looks like it's happy now. So I'm going to take these grip buttons and hold them both at the same time. And if you look here in the center of the screen, I'm now human size versus elephant size versus dog size. Also, if I'm right-handed, or if I'm left-handed and I've got it set up for my right hand, I can just click the bottoms of the controllers together, and it rotates the, it basically just swaps the interface so that I can use my dominant hand. Now, the Google Poly thing I was talking about is actually going to be on your menu hand. So whichever hand you have that has all of this sort of information about color and brushes. At the bottom, there's a Google sketchbook looking icon, and below that is actually a sign-in button. So as soon as you sign in here, or click that, it's actually going to tell you to take the headset off. And on the computer screen, should have a browser up to let me log in. And I'm just going to use my regular IU login for this, of course. And then CAS comes up right away as soon as you use an IU username. And then all you have to do is say hit allow after you get past the standard login. There we go. So now I can just go right back into Tilt Brush without even having closed it. And I'm logged in. And I'm going to paint a little bit more here and make it a little bit more obvious what I'm doing. That way when I upload it, you'll know that it's the thing I just made in this room. So nothing too specific, but there's some sort of dynamics to it. All right, we got two colors, big brushes, small brushes. I'll even make one big swipe way up in the air. Actually, I should probably make that a rainbow, right? So I choose the rainbow brush here. And all I'm using is my thumb on these touch pads to interact with the size of the brush. Okay, now I'm going to make myself small again, or human size, I should say. Okay, all right, that's good enough. So I'm now going to look at this left hand set and choose the upload button that's basically to the right of the Google book. Okay, upload failed, oh no. It's because it's a live demo, that's a requirement. All right, so what I'm going to do to fix this is I'm going to actually leave Tilt Brush and come back in. Should probably, when you do this, test that it uploads before you. Oh, it did? Really? Oh. You don't have to. You can though, and that'll just save to your local spots. And actually, that's what I'll do real quick, so I don't have to create something new. So I'll just hit Save Sketch. Oh, that's yeah, okay. It needs an icon. Got it. Now upload. Out of disk space. You're right, Bill. So I wonder if my Poly account is filled up. That's probably what it is. I've been doing a lot of experimenting with Poly, so. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay, well, actually, I'm going to move on to the other apps just to give you a sense of what they look like. So, Maquette. Yeah. Steam will usually sort of double check it doesn't need to update and do a few arbitrary exchanges with the Valve servers, and and say, okay, yeah, you can run this. Actually, it might just be waiting for tilt brush to actually close. Yeah, that's what it is. There we go. All right. So Microsoft Maquette, it's a sketch modeling package. So you can do sketches in here that use brushes, but mostly it's for modeling. And what's neat here is you don't have to necessarily go to Poly with your creation. You could just save it as a GLTF and go right into Unity or go right into whatever package you want to use it for. So I'm just gonna look at my hands here. I have like a ray cast off of this hand, which is a beam. Off of my left hand, I've got a menu, and then I can say create new project. Puts me in a blank empty space. And then I have this sort of assets management menu, similar to Tilt Brush, where I'm pointing with one hand at the other hand. And you know, there's primitives you can use right away, like a cube, obviously. And I'm using the grip buttons quite a bit. So when you're in Maquette, you want to actually get these sort of, so when you get up to your object, like say I want to move this cube, I'm actually going to use the grip buttons to grab a hold of it. So I've got this like sort of plus sign cursor on the front of my right hand. I put that through it and it lets me grip and move this around. There's also handles that are really hard to see on the outsides of it. When you're in the headset, it's easier to see. And they let me scale it if I'm in that mode. So what I'm going to do here is actually, oh yeah, actually this is what you do. So you grip it with one hand and you'll see these handles. They look like little gray circles. Can you see those okay, Bill? Okay. So then if I get my other hand near them and I grip it, then I can scale on that axis specifically. Okay. They are going to add snapping and measurements to this to make it more somewhat engineering related and more relevant to a real scale. That's one of the most highly requested features for Maquette, because if I were to build, say, a sphere here, scale it to some dimension that I wanted, I can't even snap it to that surface yet. So these tools are pretty young, but I can imagine in future versions as they continue on. This one is technically in beta testing right now, so you can make your requests now too, and hopefully they'll implement it. All right, so Google Poly inside of here is just searchable. You can't log into your own account. So there's actually a button in the assets tool at the bottom that just says Google Poly. It says search for Google Poly. So now if I really wanted something like the crayfish, I have to actually type it in here in VR. But this is what I'm talking about in terms of a Unity interface. So this Maquette was made in Unity. So what we're doing here is now just sort of using their Microsoft's implementation of of this tool. So this is another problem, is uniform scaling seems to elude me. Did you notice this, Bill? Okay, let's see if I can, nope. That's scaling me. I think with like when I was working with these, to get uniform scaling, you have to actually be able to put your hands both in the object, grab both grip buttons, and it did work. Yeah, there he goes. So I think I have to make myself smaller. I have to make myself bigger. Then I can put both of my hands inside of the crayfish, and then I should be able to scale up. Yeah. So maybe I scaled the world there. It's not the best. So that's another reason why I said in the criteria, you have to like kind of say, is this actually better than using a keyboard and mouse? And in some cases, it's probably not. Yeah, there I just copy and pasted it using the grip button. So experiment with this interface. There's a bunch of sort of like, you know, obvious tools like erase, you know, just erasing things. Notice that you can take your thumb on and off, or sliding left and right on the controller to size a lot of the instruments that you're using. And no, I'm gonna move on to blocks real quick, and then we should definitely do some demos. So Maquette's free, blocks is free. It was installed, but apparently it wants me to accept the license agreement once more. Okay. Just their introduction, which is over there. So in blocks right away, same thing. I can swap the handsets just by clicking the bottoms together as far as my dominant hand goes. Do that again. And then your tools are on your hands. You have color on the back for coloration of the surfaces. And then you have like this insert stroke tool, paint tool, grab tool, modify tool, and erase tool. I found blocks to be, I mean, box modeling is tedious if you've never done it. It is relaxing. But I think if you're up and moving around, it's not as relaxing. Jeff, I want you to hear your opinions of this as you try out blocks, because I found it to be like kind of cool to make really efficient models where I can just kind of put a block in space and move it around and then modify, say, the vertices on it by going to this modify tool and grabbing a vertice and moving it. And then you have the edges here, you can move the edges. And if you're, this type of modeler where you're working with primitives and just scaling out and subdividing the surface. So like I go back to modify, and it's got a bunch of buttons across the thumb pad, so I can do reshape, extrude, subdivide, and then actually work with the surface itself. You can get somewhere, but you've got to have a plan in mind when you're box modeling. So I think if you come from the world of box modeling, this can be beneficial. If you're never a box modeler, then this might be challenging or tedious for you. So I've got some sort of model here, but I'm not logged into Poly, so let me do that. There's actually a menu, as you would imagine, for publish, and it'll probably say, hey, what should I publish to? Take off your headset and sign in, then try publishing again. So it brought up the website. Thanks to logging in last time, it's going to let me just quickly allow, and I don't have to re-log in. Let's see if I'm out of space for this little tiny model. Okay, so now I'll try that again. So go to the little save diskette here, publish. There, it went ahead and put it up online. And then if I go to my laptop, which is interesting, I was on the desktop, but my laptop, it has the Poly website up on it. As you can see, it brought it right up. I can interact with it. And then, actually, no, this is on the desktop screen. I'm getting confused on which one. Yeah. And then just you fill in the information you want, the privacy that you want, and visibility. If you want to allow other people to remix it, this is the collaborative part I'm talking about, and then you publish it, and it would actually be out on your project. I didn't name it or anything, so I'm not going to publish this. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what you can do. Just a quick overview. I'd rather have you try it yourself. So I'm going to leave tilt brush going up here, and then Dave has tilt brush going over there. Jeff has Maquette going over there, and then Bill and I will get blocks going over here. So yeah, AnimVR and MindShow are the only two that do animation. And then getting that animation up to Poly, I wasn't able to figure out how to do that from a VR interface. So maybe to come. Yeah. Question online here. Oh no, Bill said any questions. Okay. Okay, I'll get rid of that. Run tilt brush again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it actually can export MP3s and I believe WAV files. The one really neat thing about that being open source is they did publish it. So like, say you had a student that wanted to try this in the Dart lab, you just search for Soundstage on GitHub. Or Soundstage VR, I should say. And then the GitHub repository comes up, and they've published it, so you don't have to actually download the code. You can actually get their distribution. I think they have a release link down here somewhere. Soundstage VR.
Just bin, I think. Go to bin.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Yeah, you go to the bin folder, and I think if you download the entire thing, you just use the bin folder, so I'll do that. Now, the thing is, Margaret, this was made in like 2015 or so, and I think they last updated in 2016. Or no, a year ago. Okay. That might have just been when they uploaded it. So like it'll work, but it's using older code and things. But it's all there. But at a minimum, you can just run it, install it and run it and utilize it and get exported sound. But if you have anybody that's like really wanting to put in like a electronic cello or something, you know, they could feasibly, if they know how to program it, put all that in there and have that be part of the system. Okay, so I'm being limited for disk space on this specific, like the Windows system here. That's what's happening. So no worries. Just let Tilt Brush run here. And then Tilt Brush, blocks, and then Maquette. Let's get another Maquette going.
Let's say thank you or something.
Okay. So for the folks on Zoom, thank you very much for attending here. Oh, there is a question. You want me to read it?
Yeah. They sent it to me privately. So there's two questions, one from Frank and one from Jeanette.
Okay. You're designing the VR experience here. Could a movie of a scene, say a walkthrough through a state park, be converted into a VR model? Okay. So it's tricky to convert. So the question is like if you're working in or if you have access to a state park, could you convert that information into these scenarios and work with that? That would be quite a reach, in my opinion, because these packages are not meant to bring in models that aren't like already up on Poly. So we'd have to start there and say, could we first digitize the state park, which there are ways to do that with drone surveying using photogrammetry. And we have talks about photogrammetry and digitization. That would be the way where I would start for digitizing like a section of a state park. And then once you have that data, which this has been done, there's a research project that did Montauban and certain parts of Rome. So this is feasible. It's significant work. And then once that's uploaded to say Poly, for instance, you could take that and try to get it to work down in one of these packages and then annotate over the top of it. So yeah, it's feasible. I'm not sure if these packages will be able to take such a heavy data set, which would be like a 3D scan of a part of a state park, but it's very possible. And just depending on how big the model is, there might be a way to do it. So it might just be more conversations about and maybe testing to see if we could get it to work. Other question. What do you think is the best VR creative tool for exporting for 3D? For exporting? Oh, for 3D printing. For 3D printing. Well, you eventually with a 3D printing need to get to an STL file, which is a stereolithography file. You can get to an STL file from none of the tools I showed you today, meaning like not natively. I can't go in any of these tools and export to an STL right away. But what you can do is export to an OBJ from Maquette, or in blocks, you can export to Poly and download from Poly the OBJ. And then once you have the OBJ, you can convert to an STL very easily. I've never converted from a GLTF to an STL file for 3D printers, but I know for sure you can't print out a tilt brush painting to a 3D printer unless you had some more sophisticated post-processing steps, which is not impossible. Yeah, it's important for 3D models to be waterproof. So there's also the possibility that if you created something in one of these tools and got the OBJ out, you'd still need to actually like make sure the water is model, or the model is watertight, which may require a keyboard and mouse intervention to make that happen. Okay.
All right, so let's put the thank you.